Well, last week's was really tough for the Lions. They played the Lightning. This week's going to be tougher. Well, last week we had the Lions and Lion play, and it was a pretty good game in the context for those teams. The one problem was it was a very one-sided game for most of the game. It was in the end a very close game, but not the greatest game in the world. In fact, as the Lightning was winning most of the game, then Lightning decided to just stop, and that ended up being a problem. Yeah, that's okay. And unfortunately, when that occurred, the Lightning weren't able to keep it up at the end of the game, and the Lions were able to win that game at the very end. It didn't go in overtime, but it might as well have been, due to the fact that teams were extremely close in that regard. But there were a few other things about this for the Lions this week, and the problem with that is that this week is going to be even a tougher week for them. And why is that the case? Well, this week they play in reality the hardest game of the season. They will play against the Panthers in the game of the week this week. And that is pretty huge. But before we get to that, a few things that did happen last week, in week 6, whereas the Panthers were able to crush UNC, which is not very good for the Lightning or the Lions in this regard, because if they can crush that team, and that team is actually a decent team overall, then there's almost no chance that the Lions are going to be able to beat Lions or the Lightning are going to be able to beat the Panthers as it is. And the bad news is that Lions and the Lightning both have to play the Panthers. Lions play it this next week. Lightning play them back down in week 16, which is pretty far away, but we're still looking at that way in advance. As for some of these teams, otherwise, they got a big problem. There are a few teams out here that are currently not even looking at a chance they can get into the playoffs at this point in time. Looking at the teams, there are 4 teams that literally have no wins. The Falcons and Jets still have not gotten a win yet, and looking at that, the Falcons and Jets do play later in the season, so there will be a win at some time, unless they somehow get a tie and have no win still. Now, the other team that we have that's had some problems has been probably the worst team in the entire league right now is the Hawks. The Hawks have not won a game yet either. In fact, they've scored less points than a lot of the other teams in the league. Of course, no team has scored as good as the Panthers except for the Lightning and the Lions, and the Lions still have only about 100 points versus the Panthers have up at 125. So looking at this week, this is going to be an interesting week for that. Looking at the teams for this week, Falcons have to play Westville this week, which should be a decent game for them. It shouldn't be too difficult for them to have a win there, and Westville this year. The problem is Westville is doing very well in this year, and honestly, I don't know how it's going to work with that. As for the Hawks, after losing to the 6th game, they play the Bulldogs, and Bulldogs are not going to give anything up for them this week, so they're going to be still 0-7. They're going to be 0-7 as of that week. They were predicted to be .772, 778 with one of the easier schedules, and I don't think that really is going to show up as it is, because they were supposed to lose only these 3 games here and win all of these games up to this point. And guess what? They haven't won a game yet, which already shows they're going to be in it. Their best possible record at this point would be .66, and unfortunately, that doesn't show very good for playoff potential at this regard. As for the other team that currently hasn't won a game yet, Indians haven't won a game yet, but they've done some decent scores and gone pretty close. The only game that wasn't really that close was against the Panthers, and there was one against the Lion. The only teams that were undefeated at that point. Now, the Browns game was wet. It was raining at that point, so they had a hard time. Neither team did really well in that game. Browns just are better playing in the rain. They practice in the rain all the time. The only 2 teams that do that are the Panthers and the Browns. So it's been pretty one-sided for it. All the games that they have done so far, they've tied week 1, and they had 98 points. They average, with the exception of the Otters game, about 80 points per game. So they've done decently, and it's not done well. And that is what's going to be the lookout for this next week. As for the Lions, they play the Panthers this week. They have some of the toughest games over the next week. They play the Saints, and they play the Panthers, and they got to play the Lightning again later in the season, which is going to be versus, and that's going to be that would be another tough game. That could be very easily be the one game that the Lions lose if they win this week. However, you got to look at the teams that are currently have not won a game yet. And unfortunately, luckily for you, the Colts were able to win a game. They were able to win against the Hawks, so no surprises there. The Hawks just did not show up and did not do well. They had not shown up for any of their games throughout the season so far. UNC got the only game they won against was the Tex, and guess what? They're not doing too well. They're actually getting a pretty good score in their first 3 games, averaging about 90-some points per game. Then they've basically been blown out the rest of the games. They've only scored on average of at those games of about 60 points, and that does not show well for them. Now, granted, they were playing two really tough games and one game that was kind of what was actually kind of close. But if you can look at that and say, hey, their Techs are going to have a good chance. Not really a good team, a game that you could say the UNC were able to win easily off of. However, the Jets, they average around 60-some points per game, and obviously they have not scored higher than, except for the Athens and the Giants game, than that amount. And they were fully developed in most of those games. The only game they did not have everybody was in the Giants game and the Athens game. And the Athens also had injuries during that game, so who knows what's going on with that one. Looking this week against the Browns, it's not going to be very fun for them. Another game that they're going to lose. Now, regularly, I thought they were going to be 8.833, which means they were going to win, 14 or games. I believe that's what I said, 14. Yeah, our prediction was they're going to win the division with 14 wins or 15 wins, and so far that does not show up at all. I'm not pretty surprised if the Athens instead took at least the playoff slots away from them and the Jets. And honestly, if a team does not win a game before win 2 games before the halfway through the season, which is the 9th game, they have pretty much no chance of making the playoffs, especially with some of the teams that have got such a high score right now. As for the NFC East, it's been a pretty one-off wins. We had some pretty decent teams. The Beagles currently have a pretty high wins. They're only losing against the Knights in week 1, but only by 6 points. They're scoring on an average of 9 points per game. They barely beat the Jets. That was also a rainy game, though, so it was not a huge game. In all the other games, they've scored about 9 points per game. And honestly, looking at this week, it would be very interesting. Currently, playoff position, if the playoffs were to happen today, which is obviously way in advance, we're only looking at week 6. Next, we're moving into week 7 here. Obviously, the Panthers would be the first seed. The Tigers crept ahead after winning this week against the Browns, and we're now ahead of the Browns and Jets. Although currently the Browns and Tigers are both still going to make the playoffs at this point. Cardinals will be there as well, and the Giants are going to do as well. I'm reading this is not right. Please, let's move this. However, the Angels fall below the Dogs this week. Not great. It's very unlikely for an entire team to. It's very unlikely for any specific team to go full out and win the entire. Basically, have their divisional leader and the 3 wildcards. But this could happen this year. They're looking at the ABL West. And honestly, it's not. Packers are a little bit low, but that's perfectly fine. I mean, you're going to have one team that's going to be low, and they've actually been scoring decently, even though it's only been 80 points per game, and our teams have going in like 96. But I would not be surprised if this team is the divisions, this entire division makes the playoffs. As of right now, Lions. Same thing with the ABL West. That could potentially do it. But the same thing with it. I don't see much in it. It's going to be kind of disappointing for any of the teams right now who make the playoffs as divisional leaders for everyone else. Now, granted, the ABL East is not so much in that scenario because of the fact they do have 2 decent teams and they have 2 kind of off teams. But we're all looking at week 6 here, and there's not going to be this week. Oh goodness, they're out of the playoffs. No, this point is not it. They'll get to figuring that out. All right, getting into week 7. For this week, we've got some pretty interesting games, and I'll go ahead and give my predictions out for these games as well. UNC plays Pirates. Okay, UNC are kind of like, yeah, UNC you're not doing well. However, the Pirates aren't doing well either. And the fact is, this could be a game that's going either way. And my prediction here is that this is going to be a very one-sided game for the Pirates, since UNC was only able to score 66 points last week. Now, granted, that is showing about the same thing as the Pirates, who didn't score very well either and lost their game. But at least the Pirates are actually scoring more consistently. They're actually scoring about 80 points per game. And in my prediction, versus UNC, who's not scoring nearly as many points, I have to go with, make sure I'm right about that. UNC is 1-5, only scoring on average, other than the Lions and other than the games that are in the division, haven't done too well. I'm going to say that this is going to be a very one-sided game. I'm going with a 20-point advantage to the Pirates. Now, I didn't do too well this last week. I was like 80 this week. I was like so far. So this is very this is a tough game. Ethan has done fairly well over this last couple of weeks, and the Tigers have done really well as well. I mean, both these teams are at a position where they could both be in the playoffs if we went through it the next couple of weeks. I mean, obviously the Athens are only 3-3 at this point, but that's not too bad. Honestly, being 500 at this point is not a terrible thing. It's not the end of the world. Now, and the Tigers are doing decently. They're 5-1. They're doing better right now, and obviously that's it. The point system here is that they are scoring 96 points per game. As for the Athens, they are scoring only about 86 points per game. This could be a game changer. This could be a game that could be either way, honestly. The Tigers are favored this game. However, I can't go with the Tigers winning this game. I think the Athens will be able to come up and finish the game off. I'm going to go with a 2-point advantage to the Athens. However, this game is going to be a very close game. All right, Jets and Browns. Oh boy. I mean, honestly, way Jets have been working. I just don't see it. Jets are currently last. They have not won a game in their division. They're not last in the entire league, by the way. Believe it or not. There are two teams that are actually. There's one team that's actually worse than them. But here's the deal. I just don't see the Jets winning this game, especially since a team that's super red. I'm going in favor of the Browns this week, and I got to say I'm going to 10 points in favor of them. All right, game of the week. We'll get back to Dragons and Colts. This is going to be an interesting game this week. For the fact is, problem is the Dragons have done really well in the games where the teams have had a strong defense. They have not done well in teams that had a strong offense. And bad news is that the Colts are one of those teams that has a really strong offense. It doesn't seem that way so much because they have the same sort of defense. But looking at their scores for last week, the Colts won against the Hawks. Now, granted, that was the Hawks. But previous week to that, they scored 103. But previously, they lost and only got 66 points. This is going to be a game where I'm going to say, yeah, there's not much of a chance that the Dragons lose this game, and I don't think they're going to. I'm going to go with the Dragons winning this game. That's my prediction. I have to say 10-point prediction for me. All right. Bobcats and the Dolphins. Really tough game this week. Bobcats are 2-4, while the Dolphins are currently 3-3. I mean, honestly, this is a tough one for me. It's a close game either way, and the only difference I think is that the Dolphins are scoring an average of 92 points per game. Bobcats are only scoring 81. I have to go with the Dolphins winning this game. However, I think it's going to be a lot closer than what the point prediction says. I'm going to go with a 3-point prediction in favor of the Dolphins. And if any one of you guys go ahead and predict any of these games, I'm putting these things below this sheet, below each of the Sports Hour episodes as from last week. And moving on. Chargers and Giants coming out. This is a tough one. Chargers and Giants game really could go either way. 2-3-1 with an average of 75 points per game. Here's the problem, though. Looking at the Giants' score, who are 5-1 right now. I believe that's correct. 5-1. Yeah, 5-1, getting a 95 points per game. This is a one-sided game. I think this is gonna be one-sided. I'm going with the Giants winning this game. And the prediction is, as it's really close, I'm going to go with a 3-point prediction in favor of the Giants. Cardinals and Dogs. Oh, this is going to be a tough one. Oh, Cardinals and Dogs. Now, Cardinals are 5-1, while the Dogs are down here 3-3. Dogs haven't won a divisional game yet, or averaging 80 points, versus the Cardinals, who are scoring 85. I mean, honestly, this could go either way. My prediction is it's going to be very tough and very close. I will go in favor of the Dogs here, but mostly because of the team's schedules, that I think that the Dogs do have a better chance of winning this game. However, it's going to be a very close game. In favor of the Dogs, I'm going to go with 2 points in prediction. All right, Werewolves and Indians. This is like the weirdest game, to be honest. It's not a divisional game, but might as well be. Both teams have a very close standard. Werewolves are winning their division 3-2-1 with 86 points per game. Versus the Indians are 0-5-1. So, are we really looking at this team being even close? I would say, in this case, not likely. The only thing I think is the Indians do have a slightly better defense, and that might be what throws this game into absolute chaos. The Werewolves do have a much stronger offense and a much stronger defense as well in the context there. I have to go with the Werewolves win this game. However, I do think this is going to be a much closer game than what's predicted. 15 points in favor of the Werewolves as it stands. I'm going to go with a 3-point in favor of the Werewolves. Hawks and Bulldogs, divisional game. I don't even have to talk about this anymore. I'm going with the Bulldogs winning this game. Bulldogs are a fairly tough team as it goes on 93, 92, 93 versus the Hawks, who are, while they are much higher rated, they have not shown up. And I have to say, I'm going with a 12-point prediction in favor of the Bulldogs. All right, Ravens, Beagles. This is tough. Ravens are 3-3 right now, so not terrible to have it. But the other team, the Beagles, are 5-1 of 8 points. So this is a very close game in the context of what we're looking at. And honestly, I don't even know how to predict this game because the fact is this is a very close game. It could go either way. I'm going to go in favor of the Beagles here. It's 26 points in favor of that thing. I'm not saying it's going to be that much of a game. I mean, that card, I don't think it's going to be that bad. I'm going to go for 4 points in favor. Packers and Knights. Oh, okay, so this is a tough game here. We got the Packers. We have Packers, who are 3-3, and the Knights, who are 4-2. Here's my problem. The Packers are doing so much better in their offensive front early game. Packers, yes, and that's the one thing I think. That's what I'm thinking about this game because it isn't. While it's very close, it's looking at who the looking at to make sure I'm right about this. Packers have lost against Tigers, Otters, and Bulldogs versus teams they've beaten. The Packers have all been easy teams, and that doesn't show up well for them. Versus, we have then the Knights, who have been easy team, pretty much easy team. Lost to the hardest teams, and honestly, their games have been closer. And I have to predict in favor of the Knights here, but it's very close. I'm gonna go with 2-point prediction. Superman the text. Oh boy, Superman are currently, if I remember correctly, 4-2, I believe. Yes, Superman are 4-1-1 versus their team they're facing, the Tex, different division. We're 1-4-1. I don't even know how to say this, but I think I gotta go in favor of Superman winning this game, and I'm gonna go 7-1 prediction. I think it's reasonable to do that. Lightning and Otters, tough game this week. Lightning were undefeated. They're coming off of a loss versus the Lions. As for the Otters, they're coming off of I believe they're coming off a win from correctly. Yeah, they're coming off a win after losing week 2 against the Browns. The problem is they've won, and all their games have been fairly close. The only game that was not so much close was the first game, which was against the Bobcats. So I have to say I'm going to go in favor of the Lightning here. Lightning having a better chance of winning this game. But I'm going to go with a 1 point prediction. I don't think it's much difference. Falcons of Westville. Ugh. In the beginning of the season, I would have totally gone with the Falcons. Falcons haven't won a game yet. That's a big thing going off of this week. And they have played, let's see, easy game, but they have played 4 hard games. So they should probably be 2-4 at this point. They've lost one of the easier games, and they've lost one against the Packers, which should have been an easy game as well. I have to say this is going to be a very tough week for them, and I have to say I'm going to go, because of the Falcons' losing streak, I'm going to go with favor of Westville. 3 points. All right, Saints and Angels. This is a interesting games here. How do I predict this game off? I'm going to go with the Saints winning this game. Saints have done much better than the Falcons early game. 3 point prediction for that one, even if the Angels are favored in this game. Now, for the game of the week, Panthers and Lions. Normally, this is I would have gone with Panthers all day. However, these teams are undefeated at this point. 6-6. 6-0. I wouldn't be surprised if the game goes to a tie. It goes in overtime. The only thing I have for the favor of the Panthers right now is the fact that they are much higher rated. That's my only favor to them. Panthers currently have but the problem is Panthers have had only 2 hard games, really hard games. All the rest of them have been pretty easy games. The granted, Saints were a iffy game, but they've had some easy games. The hardest game was against the Dragons. Even the Werewolves game, I have to say, I don't predict as a very one-sided game. And I think this is going to be a very hard game for me to even predict because of that. However, the Lions haven't played the hardest schedule. They have a 2-17 versus the Panthers, who have a 2-38. I have to say this is going to be a very tough game, and I can see this game going either way. I have to go off what I think happened with the Lightning game, where the Lions did win, but the Lions were losing that game most of the way. So, in my prediction here, I'm going to go in favor of the Lions. 1 point prediction. This game's going to go in overtime, I think. I'm going in favor of the Lions. If the Panthers do win this game, I won't be surprised. But this game is so close. I can see this going either way. And those are my predictions for this week. You guys can put your predictions down in the comments below. And if you guys want to pick a team, you can go back to episode number 1, and you can figure out, you can do your team from there. Thank you guys for watching Sports Hour. I will be back next week with the predictions for last week and this next week, coming up week 8.